Hey everyone, it's Zahava. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the June reading wrap-up. So without further ado, let's get right into the books because I don't want this video to go on for a long time. So the way that I've decided to do the wrap-up this month is we're just going to sort of go through the books that I read in a chronological order, as in starting from the books that I read at the beginning of the month until the books that I read at the end. So the first thing that I wanted to point out is that a lot of the books that I read this month are blue. They're blue for some reason, which is not something that was designed. It just happened to end up that way. So I think that it's just really, really cool. I wanted to show you guys that. Let's talk about these books more in detail. So the first book that I want to talk to you guys about is The Man Who Sold Air in the Holy Land, which is actually a book that I finished at the end of May, but I didn't get a chance to report to you guys on, so I decided to include it in the June reading wrap-up. This is by Omer Friedlander, who is a Jewish Israeli that I think was brought up in the UK or studied in London, at least in his uni days from what research I was able to do. It's a pretty short book coming in at about 235 pages, and it gives 11 stories that are really just slice of life, as if you're opening a window into the characters' lives. And it's what I love about it the most, and I've talked about it a little bit before on the channel, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it right now, is just that the characters are flawed and they are at sometimes really jarring. Like there's one story in which a woman says that she wished it had been her daughter who died instead of her two sons, type of thing. So there's definitely going to be moments where you're not happy with the characters, but I think that that's what makes this book so beautiful. It's because you're not expecting people to act the way they do, and because the book is written in such a way where you're just observing the characters as they go through their lives, it's not setting you up in a way where the author is passing judgment or enticing you to pass judgment on these characters one way or another. And though the book is not magical or fantastical in any way, like it's not really considered magical realism or anything like that, it does have an overarching tone of being somewhat magical in the way that it's lyrical in its prose and storytelling, and it's like you're entranced by the stories, but it's kind of like you have to take the stories at face value and sort of suspend your disbelief in order to understand that these situations within these individual tales are actually happening. I don't know if that makes sense, but like one that I can think of, which I spoke about before on the channel in a previous video, is that there's one short story in this novel where there's these two brothers and they have like a show and tell at school, and they want to bring in a Holocaust survivor. So as they're doing their errands, they come across a Holocaust survivor who is at the grocery store, and they just bring the man home with them. And their parents like don't ask questions. Like it's not considered a weird thing for these boys to have kidnapped an old man, essentially. So it's just like the type of storytelling where you have to take it at face value and kind of go with the whimsy of it, and not necessarily say, like, I think a normal reader would ask questions and be like, how come no one is like wondering why these little boys have kidnapped this man? It's just kind of like you need to go with the flow of the story and not be too critical about it, if that makes sense. And in that way, you're going to get a lot of enjoyment. So this one was definitely one of my favorite reads so far this year. It was a 5-star for me. If you guys like short stories, I highly, highly, highly recommend this one. They were not all 5-star stories within this collection, but overall, this collection was definitely a 5-star read for me. And you know, these stories are sometimes funny and sometimes tragic and sometimes shocking. So you have all different moods, and yeah, I just highly recommend. Next, I finally got to The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, which is one of the more popular books that have been circulating around the bookish community, I guess, in the last few years. This one, I would say, definitely lives up to the hype. It is twisty, it is suspenseful. I read it in one sitting. In one sitting. That is, it took me a few hours, maybe about 5 hours or so to read, but it was the kind of book that kept me flipping pages. The prose is very accessible, the pacing is very fast, it just makes you want to flip pages over and over again. If you're asking if it's worth the hype, as I've said, absolutely. So I gave this book 4 stars. I had a really, really good time with it. If you guys haven't read it, I highly suggest that you do. I know that they are coming out with a book-to-screen adaptation of this book later this year. So they're coming out with a book to screen adaptation of The Housemaid later this year, and I can't wait for that to come out and to see how they treat this story on film. So yeah, definitely check out The Housemaid if you haven't already. I mean, for me, this means that Frida McFadden is actually an author that I would check out again. I know that there's been some slight controversy about her books. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, like maybe she's using AI or copied plots or something from somebody else, but I can't really comment on that too much because I didn't actually research it and I don't know what people are saying. I just, I read the book, I enjoyed the book. I wanted to tell you that and I will read more from this author. So yeah, this was great. So since June was Pride Month, I wanted to get a few queer reads. You guys, I'm so sorry, but we're in the middle of a flight path. If you're new here, you probably don't know that. And there's like a lot of airplanes that are going through right now. So we're just gonna have to deal with it because I have to keep the window open on account of the temperature and you guys know how it is. So we're just gonna continue on. Yeah, so since June was Pride Month, I wanted to make sure that I got a few queer reads onto my roster this month. The first of which was The Fireborn Blade by Charlotte Bond. This is a little novella with some sapphic elements in it. It's a fantasy dragon slaying type of novel. It was good. I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It's the first in a series of 2, I believe, although the romance didn't really develop for me in this book. So maybe it will continue or be further developed in the second book, but I liked it enough to buy the second book right away because Book Outlet was having a sale and I think it cost like $7.99, which would be their $5.99 US dollar sale when they hold it in the US. We get it in Canada for $7.99. So I picked up the second book of this duology and I'm hoping to see that the romance will develop a little further, but this is a cute, sweet novella and it did what I wanted it to do and I really enjoyed it, so there's not really much else to say about this one. And then we come to the first DNF that I had this month. It was a library book. It was called The Fourth Consort. That was supposed to be also a queer-ish novel, which I think I picked up because it was going to be like a queer novel for Pride Month and that, but also a sci-fi, and I don't know, it didn't do it for me. I ended up getting bored with it. It wasn't really going anywhere. The pacing was kind of off for me, but essentially you had a pair of space explorers that were landed on or rather they were abandoned on a foreign planet where the population of that planet, whatever beings are on that planet, were sort of being like, okay, it's hard to explain. So let me see if I can sort of sort it out for you guys. All right, so you have these 2 characters that are on this mission to go to a planet where they have to woo the planet's inhabitants to come into their alliance because there is a competing alliance that is also landed on the planet at the same time. And these 3 people, the pair of people that we focus on and the other person coming from another alliance, they're trying to get the planet to either side with the one alliance or side with the other. So I hope that makes sense. So we're following the 2 people that were abandoned on this planet by their overarching governing authority. And the one person decides they're going to stay in the spaceship and wait for rescue, but sends the other one in as sort of like a diplomat. So this other one that goes into the planet ends up being like, I guess it's like I want to say it's like a matriarchal type of planet where the beings are kind of insect-like, and the one who is in charge decides that she's going to take the male of these 2 that are here and make him into her sort of consort, hence the 4th consort, because males are not very valuable, I guess I would say, and I don't know, it was just not working for me as a story. I'm sure I'm not explaining it as well as I could be, but it just was not a good story. I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. This is by the same author that wrote Mickey 7, which they turned into a screen adaptation, I think, called Mickey 17. But again, I had higher hopes for this one, and I think I DNF'd it at around page 193 out of 400 and something because I was just not feeling it anymore. So it didn't work for me, but it might work for you guys, so I would suggest that you check it out. Then I listened to on audio The Terror by Dan Simmons. So this was a book that I had picked up just because it was a Libby loan and I needed something to listen to while I was working that I could only half pay attention to. And because I had already seen the mini-series of The Terror, which I think is, I want to say maybe it's going into its 3rd season or only ran for 2 seasons, but the first season was The Terror and the second one was some other Asian-inspired chronicle that I don't even think I saw the second season, but I did see the first one and Kieran Hines is in it. And it was really good. It ran over, I think, 10 episodes. And because I had seen that mini-series ahead of the time, do you guys hear that? There's like one airplane after another after another. I'm so sorry, you guys, if you could hear that, but we have to film when we have time to film. So I read The Terror, and I want to say that I appreciated both the book and the miniseries for different reasons. I love the visual representation that was given in the miniseries, and I didn't actually know that this was a light fantasy horror-esque type of novel, but it makes a lot of sense because there's this giant kind of beast that comes after the people in the ship, and I thought it was just like historical fiction, but now having listened to the book, it makes a lot more sense to me, and knowing that it's in the genre of like kind of paranormal horror, I don't want to say magical realism because it's not really, but I would say it's more like paranormal and horror. It makes a lot more sense to me. I will say that I enjoyed the ending of the book much better than I did the ending of the series because it gave you a little more of the First Nations folklore. So I did like it. I like the book. It is a really long audiobook, but I think it's definitely worth the time. And overall, I gave the book 3 stars, which is very respectable. The next queer book that I read this month was called Nicked, which you guys have seen in a previous video of mine where I showed you a little novella haul or like a small library haul of what I was reading or wanted to read for Pride Month. So I won't get too much into that book now because I did kind of give a summary of that book in that other video, but essentially this is a queer historical fiction, I guess, which has to do with the theft of the bones of St. Nicholas. It's funny, it's well-paced, it's written by an author whose normal repertoire is for young adult, and this is his first adult novel. I really liked it. I had a good time with it. I felt it was very lighthearted. The prose is funny. The pacing is relatively quick. I also love the double entendre of the title. Goodreads averages this book at a 3.68, but I gave it a 4 stars. So for me, it just, I don't know, for whatever reason, it really worked. So that is Nicked. Then we have another library read, which was The Last Gifts of the Universe. And this one, I don't know, it's like I read it about 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I remember really enjoying it while I was in it, but in the end, if you ask me what this book was about, I kind of hardly remember. So I actually had to do some research while I was preparing the script, because I do kind of have a script, you know, when I sit down and talk to you guys about these books, even though it may not seem like I have a script, I do have a script. So I had to actually go back and get some research done because the book in and of itself was not very memorable. It was not memorable. So I had to go back and look at the plot points, and basically it has to do with a brother and sister who are space explorers, and they're on the trail of last little bits of information from a society who has been attacked by an unseen, unknown force, and they are trying to find out all the information that that society knew about this attacking force before they were forced to flee their planet, and eventually I believe they become extinct or die somewhere else. But this brother and sister are trying to find the information that could lead to more information about this nefarious source. So they're kind of like on this trail. They're following they're following what this extinct society knew about this force. So I hope that that makes sense. And basically it is a book about relationships. For me, it was a cover choice. Like, I looked at the cover of this book and I said to myself, gee, there is a cat in a space helmet. I definitely want to read that book and see where that's going. But I remember liking the book when I was in the book. I gave it 4 stars. They also run into, you know, this brother and sister in the book, they also run into trouble with other people that are searching for the same information and are kind of trying to piggyback off of their efforts and their work. So they have those people to thwart as well. It was good. I liked it when I was in it, but altogether, I think it's pretty forgettable. I would probably not remember this book next year or ever having read it at all. So I don't know, you guys can decide if it's right for you or not. I can just tell you that when I was in it, I liked it, but now 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, I find it extremely forgettable. So there's that. Next, we have Awakened. And this one, if you guys remember from a few videos ago, was a book that I told you I had annotated or started to annotate, but in the end, it was a DNF. It was a DNF. I just could not get into the prose of this novel. It had no discernible plot that I could suss out. The main character, despite being 31 years of age, presented as if she was 15 years old, acted as if she was 15 years old. I get it that it's probably a coming of age story, but you cannot present, at least not for me, a character in a novel as being a 31-year-old and she acts like she's 15. I just was not jiving with this book, despite the gorgeous cover, despite the amazing premise of, you know, a coven of trans witches. It was supposed to be something of a witchy sci-fi centered around a trans community, and I really feel like the author let me down, both in the plot and character development, also because I didn't see either one of those, either plot or character development in this. And I I don't know, I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. It was not a good book. Like, I wanted more exploration into what a trans experience, like what it's like to be a trans person. And I felt like the author just kind of wanted us to know that the book was about trans people, but didn't want to talk about the trans experience, which was super weird and unsatisfying. And, you know, in the end, I'm glad that I only paid $5 for this book. And because it's annotated, I think it's going to have to go to the thrift store. But if this is something that you guys want me to send to you, you can send me an email, and, you know, I'll hold on to this book for about a week or two more after this video is published. And if you guys want to buy this copy from me, you can let me know, and I'll see if I can arrange that for you, because I was not happy with this. The next audiobook that I listened to, which I also borrowed from the library, was called Fever Dream. This was a horror, and this was a really interesting listen, I'm gonna be honest. So it's really about the lengths that we will go to as parents to protect our children when their lives are at stake, or when their lives are in peril. So the story opens with a woman who is lying in a hospital bed, and there's a little boy sitting next to her, and she's not his mother and he's not her son, but they're intertwined in this novel in a way that she doesn't remember how she got to the hospital, and he's there trying to help her come to terms with and remember why she's there. And she knows she's dying, and he's trying to help her figure out how she got there. So that's basically the premise that you're set up with at the beginning of the book. I really like this book. I don't want to say too much more about it because it really is a suspense horror, and if I say too much more about it, it'll kind of ruin the story for you guys if that's something you want to listen to. But essentially, I gave this book 3 stars, which means that I really liked it. And I would say that the audio version, even though I listened to it on audio, I would say it's a good way to consume this book. However, sometimes it's hard to tell the point of view character because it's not preceded by a title saying who's talking. So you just kind of have to suss it out in your head a little bit, but it's not too confusing where it's annoying enough to DNF it. So as the title suggests, it's a fever dream kind of experience. You're getting only what the main character can remember, or what she's trying to suss out during the whole experience of either reading or listening to this book. But if you like a psychological horror, this one will definitely do it for you. Next, I read Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. It is my first Okorafor book. I picked it out of the library because it was only about 94 pages or so. I do have Noor on my physical TBR, which I haven't gotten to yet, but I figured that reading Binti would be a good place to start with Okorafor. I really enjoyed it. I immediately went back to the library and took out the following 2 volumes. It does center around a 16-year-old girl who leaves her community and goes to a prestigious university, where the university is then attacked by an alien species, and then she has to sort of find a way to save the school and herself, or broker peace between the peoples. So it's got a pretty predictable plot line, I would say, but in a way that's kind of reliable, in a way that's enjoyable. And you know, even though it could be considered kind of YA reading, I found this book in the adult section of the library, so I think it just centers around a 16-year-old girl, but it could go either way. It's either YA or adult, whichever, you know, I think it fits into both genres. I haven't gotten to the other 2 books yet. I'm going to aim to do that in the month of July, because each of the books is between 100 and 150 pages, and that makes it kind of a read in one sitting type of situation, or I could read it definitely in one day if I can't really read it in one sitting. And I know that there is an omnibus that is available, so if you don't want to buy all 3 books or read all 3 books, you could buy the one, and that's available for purchase. I don't have it because I don't feel personally the need to own these books. Reading them from the library is perfectly fine. So yeah, it was good for me. I gave it 4 stars. Next, I listened to William, which is a sci-fi, artificial intelligence, kind of psychological horror, thriller, suspense type novel. I gave it 4 stars, but the Goodreads average rating is 3.52 stars. So I probably liked it a little more than most of the people who were reading it. But essentially, you have Henry, who is a scientist who works in his attic at his home, and he's kind of a recluse. Like, he never really leaves the home. He's married, his wife is pregnant, and he works primarily he's an inventor. And I'm gonna read you guys what it's about, because I'm having a little trouble trying to tell you what it's about without spoiling the story. So we're just gonna read it straight from Goodreads. So this is a psychological horror meets cyber noir in this delicious one-sitting read, a haunted house story in which the haunting is by AI. Henry is a brilliant engineer who, after untold hours spent in his home lab, has achieved the breakthrough of his career. He's created an artificially intelligent consciousness he calls the half-formed robot William. No one knows about William. Henry's agoraphobia keeps him inside the house, and his fixation on his project keeps him up in the attic, away from everyone, including his pregnant wife, Lily. When Lily's co-workers show up, wanting to finally meet Henry and to see the new house, the smartest of smart homes, Henry decides to introduce them to William, and things go from strange to much worse. Soon, Henry and Lily discover the security upgrades intended to keep danger out of the house are even better at locking it in. So yeah, I mean, I really like this book. I gave it 4 stars. I think the ending of this book is what brought it from a 3.5 star to a 4 star for me. I can't really say much more about it because I don't want to ruin it for you if any of you guys want to pick it up and read it, which I highly suggest that you do. I listened to it on Libby Audio, and I think it was a great way to consume this book, but of course it is available in print for anybody who would want to pick up a copy in print. I just love the audio version, and I highly recommend that you guys check that one out. Next, from my physical TBR, I read the second in a series called A War for Truth. So this is part of a fantasy romantasy 3-book series, which also has a 4th book that was written after these 3 books were put out, and that is part of an omnibus that you can get if you want to get all of the 4 books together, or you can get the 4th book separately, which is a prequel, and I don't currently have it. But what happened, there was a bit of a story with this one. It is, so I originally got the first book of this series for free on Kindle. It was one of those books that Kindle was promoting, or the author was promoting on Kindle for free, which I picked up just because I needed something to read and was grabbing anything that was free that looked remotely interesting. So this one ended up on my Kindle, and I happened to pick it up really serendipitously, and I read about 40 pages of the first installment of this series, which is called A War for Magic, and I just remember really liking it, really wanting to read the next sentence and the next sentence and the next sentence, much to my own surprise. And in the end, I just stopped reading it on Kindle and went ahead and purchased the 3 books of this series. So this is book number 2. I do have a couple of tabs in there because I believe this was a self-published book, and there were a couple of typos. So whenever I see typos, I tend to just kind of highlight them or just tab them so that I know. There were only 2 in this book. Just one typo where a space was missing, and then the other typo was a wrong homonym. It was a TO where a TOO should have been, so I did mark that one, but other than that, I can't really say anything negative about this book. It was a really good read. Fina Reads recently put out a video talking about how downloading books for free on Kindle from independent authors can help them to get noticed. It raises their ranks in terms of the search results and also potentially the physical sales of their books. So that's exactly what happened here. I got the first copy for free from Kindle and then ended up buying all 3 of the books in the trilogy to have on my shelf. Now, one thing to note is that these books were previously released under different titles. So this is the Legacy of Light series. It is kind of a romantasy, although it's not really explored in the first or even really the second book. So I'm hoping that the romantasy aspect of it, and I want to say it's very like general romance. You're not having any spice level. Like the spice level is super 0 in these books. So it's very accessible to a wide range of readers. What I like about this book the most is that the plot actually carries over all 3 books of the series. So when you end the first novel, you're ending on kind of a cliffhanger, and then it continues into the second book, which doesn't conclude and continues into the 3rd book. So I love that. It's my favorite way to consume a trilogy because it's not a publisher taking a completely finished story and telling the author, please develop it more because we need more money. This series was designed to be told in a 3-book arc, and I really appreciate it for that because it does keep me interested and it does keep me wanting to go back. So I do have A War for Love. So it's A War for Magic, A War for Truth, and A War of Love. And I do have the 3rd one, as I've said, so I'll get to it. I just don't know exactly when. But you may have seen these books published under different names, which I'll tell you what they are. So A War for Magic was originally Prophecy of Darkness. This one here, A War for Truth, was published as Legacy of Light, which has now become the name of the entire series. And A War for Love was originally published as Mastery of Earth. So maybe you guys have heard of these books under their different names, but for now, this is the cover that I have. They have alternate covers. You guys could find that on Amazon. And like I said, I'm not sponsored. I did pay for these books with my own money. But I had a great time with the first book. I had a great time with this book, and I imagine I will have a great time with the 3rd book. If you are looking for a fantasy world with a very fully developed world, a fully developed magic system, characters that are worthy of learning and knowing about, and a plot that moves itself forward, I would definitely suggest that you check out this very little known series. And also, if you guys are interested in seeing Fina's video about the topic of the free Kindle books and how they can help independent authors, I will leave a link to that video down below in the description, and you can go check it out because this is very much in that vein, and you could help an author out too by checking out their books for free. Or if you're an author and you want to offer your books for free on Kindle, as Fina states in her video, this might be a great way to help boost your sales because it certainly worked for me. The next book I read on audio was Sword Heart. That is by T. Kingfisher. And guys, I gotta tell you, I said this in my Goodreads review. I've commented on other people's videos about this book and about pretty much anything that T. Kingfisher writes and that I see people talking about. My favorite place to be in the world right now is inside of a T. Kingfisher book. And I will die on this hill. I will die on this hill. Her books are so fantastic, especially when she treats fairy tale romance and like does that blend of fairy tale and romance or romantasy. I really, really like this book, and I think there is a second one coming out sometime soon, which I'm definitely gonna have on my radar. But let me tell you, you guys, T. Kingfisher is a master at writing a romance where there are underdog characters, and I eat that shit up, okay? I eat it up. I am showing up for that. So there's not really much to say about Sword Heart, aside from the fact that it's T. Kingfisher. It's a fantasy romance, and it is done as Kingfisher always does. It is done absolutely perfectly, and I love the characters, and it was the second 5-star read that I have had this month, which has been fantastic for me. So Sword Heart, chef's kiss. The next book I want to talk to you guys about is Winter's Orbit, and this is by Everina Maxwell. And this, you guys, I picked it up because it was a sci-fi, romance, and queer novel, which was going to be perfect for Pride Month reads, and I DNF'd this book. I did not have a good time. The characters were not great. The plot was very slow. The pacing was very slow. And I found myself honestly having to force myself to pick it up. And I thought originally that the problem was not the book. I thought that I was the one with the problem, because every time I went to pick it up, I was either interrupted by life or somebody, you know, ringing the doorbell, calling on the phone, asking me what was for dinner. Like I was constantly interrupted, and or I fell asleep. So I could never really read more than a paragraph or a page at a time. So I stuck with it, feeling like maybe it was just me and my current life circumstances that were not giving this book a fair chance. And in the end, I think I DNF'd it around 200 pages into, it's a little more than 430 pages. But the first 100 pages, literally nothing happened. I had no idea what was happening in terms of like the politics. Is very politically heavy, this book. And I don't know, it's just like I found myself dreading wanting to pick it up again, or forcing myself to have to go pick it up. And that's never really a good sign. So in the end, I just ended up DNFing it. And what I remember the most about this book is the absolute relief I felt when I put it down. So, and then subsequently, I did actually go and check out other people's reviews of this book, and I would say that they were very mixed. But from the people that did give it a 1-star review, which is what I ended up giving it, I think we all kind of DNF'd it for the same reason. So I feel like me and the 368 other people that DNF'd this book, at least the ones that reported it on Goodreads, because obviously there's probably more people that did DNF it and not write about it, but I only know about the ones that I checked on Goodreads. And yeah, we essentially DNF'd this book for the same reason. So it had a lot of promise, but was not doing it for me. So this is going to end up an unhaul. Then I DNF'd yet another book, and this one was The Library of Unrequited Love. So you guys might remember in my last video, I talked to you about picking it up from the library as one of my little like novella hauls. And in the end, the book was, let me just say, it was 93 pages, and I DNF'd it at 25 pages in because I did not have it in me to continue to the 93 pages. Now you might say, oh, 93 pages, that would take me like an hour to read. Well, good for you. I did not have an hour to waste on this book. It was so bad. It was like one paragraph. It was one paragraph that went on for 93 pages, and I just couldn't get into it. I don't know if it's because of the main character or because it was a translated book and it was just badly translated. Potentially also didn't help matters, but it was just not for me. And it's got like a 3.16 rating on Goodreads, which probably should have been the indicator that I really shouldn't have picked it up, but I did, and I tried it, and it was not for me, so that was a DNF. You guys could obviously go check that out and decide on your own if it's something you might want to read. I think that the premise of a librarian that falls in love with or has an unrequited love situation with a patron at the library had a lot of promise. I just didn't like the book. I just didn't like it, so I DNF'd it 25 pages in. I also read a second Frida McFadden book. Again, it was a Libby audio listen. I needed something for when I was working, which is how I usually get my audiobooks going so that I can listen when I'm working. And this one was also a twisty, fun ride. It's a standalone. It doesn't have any sequels. It's one of many books on McFadden's backlist. It was a good book. I gave it 3 or 4 stars. No, I gave it 3 stars. My only one ick with this book is that it was a first-person present tense narrative, and you guys know how I feel about that. It's a little hard for me to get into those books, but in the end, I think it really worked for this book because it did have 3 points of view, 3 perspectives, or 4 potentially, 3 or 4, and all written in the first person present tense. Again, not my favorite way to read a novel, but it did happen to work for this book. So basically what you have is you have the main protagonist, whose name is Quinn, who has just murdered her husband, and now she's on the run from the authorities, and she ends up being caught in a snowstorm in Vermont and forced to stay at this really weird motel outside of a dilapidated restaurant, and she's on the run. So obviously there's going to be weird characters, and Quinn is going to have to hide the fact that she just murdered her husband and is on the run from the authorities, and things happen. So definitely I would recommend you guys check that one out if you like a suspense thriller. I think it did it for me at the 3-star level. And then the last book I'm going to talk to you about in this video is A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. She is the author of Starling House, which I have a copy of on my physical TBR, which I haven't gotten to yet. And this is the first in a duology of Fractured Fables, the second one of which is a retelling of Snow White. This one here is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty. It's got a feminist perspective and sapphic elements and is a really fun time. I also loved about this book, and this is why I didn't return it to the library, because I wanted to show you that it's got these like pictures in it. I don't know how well that's going to come out on camera, but it's a book that has these like beautiful pictures in it. So it actually makes it really fun to flip the pages, and the chapters are relatively short, so you can read this book really quickly. It was part of my novella haul, or a second novella haul that I did at the library, which I didn't show you guys, I don't think, on camera, but this one here is 119 pages, and it was a one-sitting read for me. I can't wait to read the next one. I already have it, but I'm going to report to you guys about it in July when I do the July wrap up. We are actually June 26th right now, and I am filming the June reads a little bit early because of scheduling reasons, and I need to make sure that I get this video edited and up for you guys who have what to watch in July. And as I mentioned, this one is sapphic, which actually worked out really, really well because I wasn't expecting it when I went into this book. I didn't know it was going to be queer, and of course, because June was Pride Month, it just kind of made up for Awakened, and it made up for Winter's Orbit. It was just a really nice surprise to have found a queer love story in this book, and I'm hoping that the second one in the Fractured Fables will have those elements as well. So yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to say. You guys know how much I love a fairy tale retelling. This one was done super, super well, and because now I know what Harrow's writing is like, I'm a lot more likely to pick up Darling House, which I was kind of avoiding as one of the intimidating books on my physical TBR. There are so many. I know I did a video about the most intimidating books on my physical TBR a little while ago, but there's way more than you guys saw. So yeah, basically that pretty much covers the June reads for 2025. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts were, if there are any books that I've suggested to you guys in this video that you might be interested in reading after seeing it. Also, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this, and follow me on Instagram. Any interesting links that I have for you guys will be in the description down below, and I want to thank you guys so much for coming to hang out with me today, and I will see you again in the next video. Ciao for now.